Hey everyone, what's going on? How you doing? How you doing? Happy Thursday to you. Excited to be back with you today and excited to be able to chat with you and talk about all things about learning and living. But before we do that, it's been a while since we've been back, and now we're going to be coming every single week, bringing back a discussion about what's pertaining to kind of just how we're living our lives right now. Like the world is whirling. I don't even know if that's a word, but it feels like it should be. Like the world is whirling right now. And so bring you back into my home studio, my home office. This is where it all goes down. Anything that you know about me happens in this room. All the work, all the reading, all the writing, all the learning, all the listening, it all happens in here. And so welcome. So my name's Glenn Thomas, and if you don't know, and if you've never been on our page, I talk about all things about living, loving, and leading from the inside out. It's called Heart Work, and we launched a company called Heartsea a couple of years ago, and we're going live with this company in the next couple of months. And so I'm really excited about that. We're 101 days away from going live with Heartsea. Heartsea is a software platform, and we'll talk more about that in the coming weeks as we continue to move closer and closer to that. But today is about saying we're back. We're back to social. We're back to the media platform. We're back to discussions and topics of that really interest those of us who are really intrigued by this whole world of psychology and the mental of getting up every single day, living our lives, trying to enjoy it, trying to be fulfilled, trying to work, trying to raise families, trying to be social in social places and then in physical social places as well. All the things that go along with the questions and some of the answers, hopefully, that we seek to have. Today, though, I wanted to kick us off by something that has always stayed with me very, I guess, since an early age around learning and around being curious. And the reason why is because I think I can reverse engineer almost all things that are meaningful in my life. And you may be able to do the same if you reverse engineer them from the starting point of being curious, wanting to learn, wanting to understand more. And if that's the starting point, it's almost like you never can have a bad day, actually. When something is conflicting or you're angry at someone or you're having conflict with someone, and if you start from the foundation of I wonder why they feel that way, as opposed to I am pissed off that they are making me upset right now. I think when we start from a place of curiosity, it really allows us to not abdicate our feelings or retreat from our feelings, but it allows another layer of our feelings, right? And feelings and thoughts can be tricky. They can actually be incorrect. That's okay though. But I believe those when we retreat into this, or when we not retreat, but when we go into this place of this additional layer of curiosity, it allows us to have these unique experiences where by which we may instinctively want to feel a certain way, maybe mad or angry or disconnected, but it guides us into an entirely different place. So I wanted to talk about that. A lot of what I do in my free time, and you may do as well, is I scroll. And scrolling can be healthy or toxic. I mean, it just depends on who you are, how you do it, when you do it, where you do it. But I scroll because I'm fascinated by what my algorithm tells me. And I think, the same may go for you. My algorithm really is centered around a lot of people who have opinions in spaces that I'm interested in, particularly leadership, but also just life. And so for the past year, I have been scrolling, listening, asking questions, posing questions to myself about, what do I think, what matters to me, how do I feel about what that person just said, and then I put those videos sometimes in a folder, and so I can come back to them. And what I've been able to really, I guess, accumulate over the last year is really a set of amazing kind of videos that really, I think, would help us pose some questions to ourselves about what do we think about certain aspects of life and leadership and social interactions and even politics and all the sorts, even though this isn't a political thing for me. They really have pushed me in the space of curiosity. And I hope that you will be curious as well. When people ask me, what do I feel is, the cure that will, to all the ills that are transpiring in the world, I think an obvious answer for many would be, well, it must be that we love one another. And I do fundamentally believe that we have gotten away from loving one another. We have gotten into a space of tribalism that really, honestly, is antithetical to anything I personally believe in my faith as a human, and it's centered in love, loving regardless that you may be an enemy of mine, you may not like me, you may want the worst for me. I still love you as a human, because in order to be clear-minded, I have to lead with love. That's the only way I present in this world. I try and wake up every day to understand my clear-mindedness only comes from a place that's centered in love. And so to that point, that would be an easy answer. But I also think the cures of the world really start from love and curiosity, right? Being curious really, again, stops us to think, to ask questions. And so being a student at all times for me is really important. I wasn't always of that mindset. And I wonder for you as well, if you take you're listening to this and you take a moment to think, how curious are you? How curious are you in any aspect of your life? You start small. Just how curious are you as a friend? How curious are you as a spouse or a partner? How curious are you as a parent? How curious are you as a workplace leader? How curious are you? Much of what, really drives us as humans, and what I think distinguishes us between all the other animals in the world, is that we have this brain and it functions at such a high level, or it should, in most cases, that we often may forget that we can pause even in the moments where we feel as though we know the answer, we have the answer, we want to give the answer. But that curiosity really gives us the ability to pause, to listen, to ask maybe a follow-up question, and to just give ourselves time to really sit in, what are we really interested in at this moment? Are we interested in being right? Are we interested in getting it right? Are we interested in more information? What are we interested in this moment? Am I being curious? Am I curious? Do I want to learn a little bit more before I contribute to this conversation? And I believe that if you are asking yourself those questions, regardless of where you're asking them, whether it be the workplace, whether it be home, whether it be in your social circle, whether it be in conflicting situations, whether it be in the drive-through when you are really getting agitated because that is not what I ordered. I did not say that. There's no way you heard me say that. Yet and still, for some reason, we just not jiving in this drive-through. But what if curiosity came to the forefront as opposed to your impatience? That's the question. And I raise my hand right now because I will let you know my objective every day also is to test my impatience. Like I need to test my impatience because when I feel as though I'm getting more patient, my impatience comes back out. So I have to test it, retest it, and retest it. I'm naturally an impatient person. And so I speak from experience. So to that effect, for me, curiosity is not only something I desire to do, it's something that I am required to do in the sense of I'm trying every single day to become more patient. And becoming more patient for me means that I must become more curious. And I'm a curious person anyway, like intellectually, I'm curious. I want to know what you know and what you think and how you think it. But I'm also a person that looks to get it done, right? To execute. I'm a high execute. And so depending on where you fall into those spectrums, you may find yourself kind of like it's a push and pull type of experience. But I think underlying it all for me is really about centering ourselves around asking ourselves the question first and foremost, am I a curious person? Period. And just starting from there. And then picking, pulling back the layers of where you may be curious, more curious, or you may be less curious, right? There's no right or wrong answer. And to that extent, it's really challenging ourselves and charging for it into being this kind of being a student at all times. Like there is never a moment in my life where I do not want to be a student. I will be on my deathbed trying to learn a little bit more. Now, what did you say about that medication? Will it give me 30 more minutes of life? Or will it give me, talk to me a little bit more? Give me a little bit more insight. Whatever it may be, I want to go out learning as much as possible because I don't know, you may say something that may give me another month of life, right? And all jokes aside, though, that's really honestly to me how we should be charging ourselves as leaders. And I mean leaders and not in the confined silo of workplace. I mean as leaders, as people that other people seek to follow, right? Whether it be in home, or work, and again, in your community, no matter where it may be, as leaders, we should, if anyone should be striving to be curious, leaders should always be striving to be curious, because if we're leaders, then that would indicate that we have people that are following. And if there are people that are following, they have a lot of answers. They have a lot of insights. They have a lot of knowledge and experience. And I remember when I recognized that being curious was going to be the key to living a more joyful and fulfilling life. You want to know when? When I became a father. When I became a father. And I know everyone's not going to be a father in traditional sense, but I believe every man has an opportunity to be some type of father to some young person in some kind of way. And the same goes for women. You have an opportunity to be some type of mother in some kind of way. When I became a father, I recognized that I had to be more curious. Why is that? Well, what I recognized was that my son, as a baby, he could not speak to me. He couldn't tell me that he was hungry or sleepy or sick or tired or weary or anxious. I had to be curious. I had to genuinely find the signals. I had to look at him and study him and say, oh, he did that when he was sleepy the other day. Okay. And I had to digest the information and the data and put it together over time and make and come to conclusions based on the data that I received through being more curious about his signals, his nonverbal signals. I mean, my God, I mean, what a time and a place to learn how to be curious when you're really getting nonverbal signals and many verbals, obviously, because crying is a verbal signal. but all that being said, what it did for me was it really cemented for me that if I could really lock in with my son, recognizing that I had to be super curious to really be able to lead him, to make the best decisions for him. That why can I do that? Why couldn't I do that with the people that I led in the workplace? Now, the huge difference, or maybe the obvious differences, is one, these people in the workplace, they're not my family per se, but they also are adults for the most part, and they can speak. They can speak their mind. Until those points, though, I still came back to really the fundamental through line was that they're people. They are people with emotions, feelings, lives, interests, knowledge, lived experiences, education, siblings, spouses, cousins, mothers, fathers, like they're people. And if I could be just a little bit more patient and more curious as a student to learn from them, I could effectively create a life for myself and for them that was more natural and organic. Why? Because I was learning and understanding what specifically their needs were. I was learning and understanding what their thoughts were, how they saw the world, how their lens really was focused in certain aspects of their ethos. And if I could understand that for each person, then I could understand how they needed me to lead them. And I want to really focus on that point. You may have heard before, it's difficult when you're leading 100 people to ask 100 people to change to your leadership style. As a leader, it is far more understandable if you ask yourself, how can I adapt to the leadership style that my team needs? Now, you would say, well, doesn't that mean I have to adapt to 100 people? Actually, no. That's not what we're saying, actually. That's not the strategy. That's not the trick. The strategy is adapting a philosophy that allows you to be the leader that each of these humans needs. What does that mean? When I decided to be more curious in the workplace, the philosophy, the strategy of sorts meant one thing. One, I was going to be more patient. But through patience, I was going to be curious. And through curiosity, I was going to be able to exhibit love towards this human regardless of what they said or did not do. You see do you see the journey of that? I challenged myself first and foremost to say, you're going to be more patient, period, man. You're going to have to slow down. If you're more patient, you can be a little bit more curious. If you're more curious, you're going to learn so much things. It's going to be easier for you to really extend love unconditionally, even in those circumstances in which they are uncomfortable. uncomfortable having to dismiss someone from their job or their role. That's uncomfortable. But when you've been patient and curious and extended love unconditionally, it doesn't necessarily become more comfortable, but you are able to do it in the spirit in which you are trying to extend that emotion and feeling of love. It's the spirit, right? It doesn't mean it's more comfortable. It's just in the spirit of love that you're able to do it because you know that you're not doing it in any other spirit. I'm not doing it in spirit of spite. I'm not doing it in spirit of disgust. I'm not doing it in spirit of manipulation. But because I took the steps and my philosophy is very, very clear that I'm always going to do first and foremost be patient, curious, and loving. For me, that was the methodology for the rhythm. For the rhythm, not only for me personally, but ultimately for me professionally. And from that rhythm was birthed Heartwork. Like that's how Heartwork came about. It came about because of my son being born. And I figured that I was not in the position to do those things well. I wasn't in a position to be patient. I wasn't in a position to be more curious. It was not my natural nature. It wasn't who I was. I was an execute first, ask questions later person. And I couldn't do that at home with my kid. And I decided because if I couldn't do it at home with my kid, I shouldn't be able to do it at home, but do it at work with my team. I needed to be able to extend the same level of patience and curiosity and love that I did with my child, with my team. That doesn't mean that my team became my family or I treated my team like my son. No. What it means is that humans deserve, I believe, the courtesy of being treated with all those things, period, full stop. Humans deserve the courtesy of being treated with patience, curiosity, and love. And because of that, becoming a student or being a student at all times, to me, is fundamental to how we should show up as humans. I believe being a student at all times allows us to really enter into circumstances that may typically be maybe charging situations or high conflict circumstances, but we can show up in those situations when we're a student in a different fashion. We can show up in those situations in a manner that actually welcomes the discomfort because we're not there to be right. We're there to get it right. And I think for a large portion of my life, especially my professional career and my personal, I want to be right. I want to be right. And if you have ever been in that situation, if you are that person now where you like to be right, and there's nothing wrong with being right. But when being right overshadows getting it right, when being right overshadows being patient and being curious and being loving, when being right gets in the way of us collectively connecting in a human manner, are we really right? Are we really right? So I want to show you something though. I want to show you a clip. I know you know of this gentleman. You've probably seen this guy. If you follow leadership in life and thought leaders in this space, then I know you've heard of this guy and seen this guy. But you know, this is what we're going to do every single week. We're going to bring to you kind of voices and thought leaders that you may know, that you may not know, because I always like to, hear from, the mouths of those who are in spaces that we we hold the highest esteem, but also spaces that we may not have, know that we don't know of or we've not seen them. Regardless, if they're saying something that really lands and really resonates, and I think we should welcome it into the room. And so I want to welcome this gentleman into the room for us.
The best leaders I know are students of leadership. There's no such thing as an expert leader. It doesn't exist. Like there's no such thing as an expert parent. It doesn't exist, right? We are students of leadership, and even the most senior leaders constantly are reading books, reading articles, watching talks, having conversations all the time about leadership. They're always in learning mode. And I think for anyone who wants to be a leader, you have to choose to be a student of the subject. Like anything, if you want to be good at something, you have to study it.
Simon Sinek. Listen, if you want to be good at anything, you gotta study it. You gotta want to be a student. You gotta want to be a student at all times. When did we stop learning? Ask yourself, when did you stop learning? And if you didn't, I'm grateful because I'm glad you're still learning. But if you're one of those persons that you've been so busy executing, you've been so busy doing the thing, if you've been so busy in your lane, in your zone, and because of that, you haven't been learning, you haven't been the student that you would like to be. When did that stop for you? Because I know when it stopped for me. Like I remember like coming to that aha moment, and I said to myself, like, oh my God, like I haven't read a book in God knows when. Like I haven't read the paper. I've been so hyper focused on executing that I am not learning anymore. And man, I can feel it. I can feel it in my conversation. I can feel it in my contributions. At some point, we feel it. Like we can sense it because we know who we are. And there may be a moment where it's like, oh my goodness, like, but when did it happen for you? And if it hasn't happened, amazing. If it has, though, think about it. Think about it. Think about when it has taken place for you. Because there's no better time than now than to be a student again. In the world that we're living in, a world that it seems like every single day we get faster and faster. We get more evolved. We get closer and closer every single day to being smarter and thinking faster and quicker. And that's all good and great, but there's still something to be said. There's still something said about being patient. Assertive patience is what I call it. Honestly, I don't know if you've ever heard that term, assertive patience. I've been using that term for some years now because I'm patient, but I like to be patient with action. It was kind of like, huh? Like, it sounds contradictory. Patient with action means that I'm going to be patient, but I'm still going to take steps. A great example is we've been building Heartsea software platform for the past year and a half now. And if you've ever been involved in building anything, it doesn't have to be software. Software is definitely unique. But if you've been involved in building anything from scratch, whereby in which you were not necessarily the total expert in it, you must be patient because you have other experts involved. You have other knowledge resources involved. You must be patient. But as a builder, as a founder, there must be some action behind your patience. Assertive patience, to me, is a great descriptor of where we've been for the past 18 months with Heartsea, where I found myself like, the developers, we gotta go faster. Like, what's going on? But the developers are testing, they're writing code, they're testing the code. Things go wrong with the code. And you get up on the call, the test call, and get a test call, and then they try and show you something, and it doesn't work. They're like, oh, we gotta go back in there. He's like, oh, like, my God, like, are you serious? Like, we've been working on this for a couple of weeks. But my assertive patience says, okay, all right, I see what you're trying to do. can you give me a timeline on when we can test it again? All right, next week. All right, how about we come back in a couple of days? You show me what you've been able to accomplish, and then we can feel comfortable that next week is a good milestone for us, right? That's assertive patience, right? It's the act of understanding that we must at many times take our time and plan for action. Assertive patience. But back to Simon Sinek, I mean, the idea there totally is that as we talk about leadership, as we talk about life, as we talk about all the aspects and the challenges and the ups and downs of what we're experiencing, if in fact we're able to, one, be patient, and then two, be curious, I commit to you that half of whatever you're experiencing in the workplace or at home will begin to be minimal. It will be minimal in the sense of that half of the arguments you're having in the workplace or at home will dissipate. They'll go away. Not all of them, but half of them easily will go away. The reason, and look, Glenn, where's the evidence or research behind it? I don't have any studies behind it. I'm giving you what I believe is the natural kind of evolution of just human behavior. If half the time we were just a little bit more patient, half the stuff that we're dealing with would just disappear. Half of it would. I was pulling out of my neighborhood a couple of days ago, and I talked to my kids about, because they're preteens, and I talked to them a lot about driving. Now I want to get them in a mind frame of driving defensively, defensive driving. My mom always used to talk about defensive driving. And so I talk to them when I'm driving a lot about what's happening now, like how I am making decisions, how I am really looking at the road, and why I made a left, and why I paused, and why I didn't go right when this person. Like, I'm really talking them through in many instances, like why I'm doing what I'm doing when I'm driving. And that's because I believe you need around 3 or 4 years of just mental understanding of what's happening on the roads. And a couple of days ago, when I was coming out of the neighborhood, kids were in the back seat. And I typically, 99% of the time, I always look left and right. Even on the green light, when I'm about to make a left or a right turn, I look left and right, because I'm looking to see if the cars that are coming to my perpendicular are actually going to stop. Like, do they look like they're going to stop? Like, I know they had a red light. As I was pulling out, making a left turn on a green light, I already looked to my right. And I just gave a quick look to my left as I was pulling out to make the left turn. And the car to my left was coming down the road at least 45 miles an hour, 45 miles an hour, at least. And he ran through that red light. Pumped the brakes. Remember, I said 99% of the time. Thank God that was one of those 99%. That car would have crushed us. That's how fast the car was going. And I thank God for that moment. I thank God for that moment. Why am I sharing that story? I'm sharing that story because I have made that habit, or that process, a habit, by way of trying to become more of a student. Follow me here. Because I desire to teach my kids not only through doing, but through listening. I have now charged myself with the same. Not only doing, but listening. And through listening myself, I've been able to discipline myself more about doing the things that I say that are important. I know that. I hope I didn't lose anybody. By charging my kids to do a certain thing, I've now charged myself to do the same. And by doing the same myself, it has now gotten me into a habit and a discipline of doing the thing that I said is important. You hear me? It's important to look left and right before you turn. I know that, but because now I'm teaching my kids that, inversely, now it's come back to me to be the example of what I'm teaching them. And in order to be the example, I must then be disciplined enough to make those things habits such that effectively I can demonstrate it in real time without being a do what I say, not as I do type of leader. In that moment the other day, I was a do as I do and say leader. Look left and right before you make that turn on green. It saved our lives. I know 100% I wouldn't be here on this screen with you today if I wouldn't have looked left. God willing, I know I wouldn't be here. But it would have been really hard to be here if I would not have looked left. I charge you to ask yourself the very, very, very transformative question. Am I being a student? Whatever role in my life right now that I have, the roles that you have, whatever it may be, are you being a student such that you are learning at all times? And because of that, as a result of that, those in your service that you are leading, are they able to not only do as you say, but as you do? That's the question. Am I being patient, curious, and loving? If I'm being patient, curious, and loving, I commit to you that you are far more light years ahead of where many of us have been and many of us are, but we all can get there. But we have to start with the patience. And then we have to move into the curiosity. And you can't finish it off without love. That's for another day too, though. All right. So all that being said, I'm so excited to be back. I'm so excited to be back on the platform, to be able to have discussions. Next week's discussions going a little bit more about love and about Heartsea and Heartsea platform and Heartsea software. Go check us out, heartsea.ai. I'm really excited about what's to come over the next 100 days, but also what you have to share and how you'll be sharing on the platform, your insights and learning from you. And I think that's kind of one of the greatest things about, social media, that we have the ability to really extend ourselves to learning from those from all corners of the world, but then also come into these intimate spaces and intimate rooms where we're able to share and be of service to one another. I think to that extent, that's when we become the best of a student, whereby in which we have so much to offer, but there's so much to receive and so much to learn, that we're always in this curious space, always in this joyous and fulfilling space, always in this servant space, servant leadership of servant and heart-centered leadership of giving and receiving and collectively being better. So all that being said, I hope you continue to live, love, and lead from the inside out. That is hard work all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. I love you. I see you soon.